Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Oh, yes, I will watch this. Okay. Testing the weapons of Julius Caesar's British invasion. So many just great things in this title that appeal to me. And I'm excited. History hit, right? Amazing channel. Probably right now, they're not my favorite channel on YouTube, but right now I think they're my favorite. I've been watching a lot of their videos. Very interesting because they have stuff about a lot of British stuff about, shipping or different, just stuff I'm very interested in. If you're not ready to learn, there's the door. Get out. Home ec is down the hall. You're in the wrong class. It's B period. Let's go.
We don't know the exact point at which Caesar invaded, but the evidence points to somewhere along this coastline, just north of Deal in Kent. What we do know is that the Britons are already there waiting for them. To find out what happened next, I'm meeting Roman expert Simon Elliott.
This in many ways actually in 55 BC is Caesar's, the Romans' most difficult invasion of Britain, because it's against the defended shoreline. You've got Britons defending the shore as far as the eye can see. So the nobles in their chariots riding up and down, shouting insults.
Sorry, when I think of the British southern coasts, I think of these giant cliffs, and this just seems like a very nice little beach.
I can see. So the nobles in their chariots riding up and down, shouting insults, throwing javelins, the foot warriors with the spears, the shields, also throwing insults, all ready for the Romans to land.
From his description, it would seem that the British warriors are doing like I am. They've waded into the water and they're ready to receive the Romans.
Well, they're very much part of a martial culture, so this is a sort of a machismo thing for the British warriors, especially the nobility with all their retainers behind them. They've got to show that they're the main men. They're the guys that are going to kick the Romans back.
And there is this moment when the assault pauses. There's this moment when it can turn one way or the other. I think now we should go to Caesar, because he gives us this incredible description of what happened. He says here, meanwhile our soldiers were hesitating, which is a rare criticism of soldiers by Caesar.
So Caesar spoke Latin, right?
Chiefly because the sea was so deep. Then the man who carried the eagle of the 10th Legion appealed to the gods. Jump down, soldiers, unless you want to betray our eagle to the enemy. I at least shall have done my duty to the Republic and to my commander. He cried these words in a loud voice, then flung himself away from the ship and began to carry the eagle towards the enemy. Then our men urged each other to prevent such a disgrace, and all together jumped down from the ship, and the battle was on.
It's interesting there. Remember, the eagle has religious significance for the Legion. There's only one. It's the Aquila eagle. Think of Rosemary Sutcliffe and the Eagle of the Night. It's a big deal. So the Aquila is the senior standard bearer in the Legion.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And also, this is Legio Ten Equestris.
Caesar's Legion.
Caesar's
His
Legion.
Special Legion.
So it's a really Legio Ten Equestris.
Caesar's Legion.
The 10th Legion. I learned like the Marian forms, or it might have been a bit before Caesar, but I'm sure maybe during Caesar's reign as well, or at least when he was maybe not emperor, but commander, general. That there were these kind of competitions between legions, and like histories of certain legions, and how you were proud to be part of your legion and competitive against others, and you were not only fighting for Rome but fighting to save face for your legion as well. I think that sort of competitive attitude is very fascinating, and I love it. Really cool, and yeah.
Caesar's
His Special
Legion. So it's a really big deal.
It's a very big deal.
So this is Caesar telling us how jeopardous this whole invasion was, and yet the bravery of the Roman soldiers led by Caesar. Don't forget, Caesar is also a great warrior as well as a general. This is Caesar and the Romans having to deploy effectively their A game to win a very difficult.
And it is a very difficult fight.
Very difficult.
I mean, the Romans aren't good at telling you about where they made mistakes, but we know this was a full-on fight to get on shore. And what happened?
Well, one of the interesting things that we can take from the primary sources is the Romans did play to their strengths. So they would have deployed some of their galleys at either side of the beach, here and here, and enfiladed the Britons behind us with ballistas, with slings and with bows and arrows. And then the legionaries had to literally fight their way ashore, and the Britons tried to isolate clumps of them and try and overwhelm them. But the Roman discipline eventually shone through. Finally, at the end of the day, it took the entire day, the Romans won.
Caesar had done it. His troops were on British soil. It's said that this is the only successful contested landing in British history. So how...
Hold on, guys. I'm going to rewind 5 seconds. I'll be right back, all right? All right, let's go.
Successful contested landing in British history. So how did the Romans manage it? Who were these soldiers who'd achieved such an extraordinary victory?
Let's see.
To find out, I'm meeting David Richardson, a Roman expert and reenactor.
Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Caesar has crossed the English Channel, a piece of water with a fearsome reputation.
Yes.
He's landed on the soil of the edge of the known world.
Yes.
And instead of being welcomed, he receives a hostile reception. You know, what weaponry did he have with him that made him feel confident to come on land and take on all comers?
Well, let's have a look, in fact, at the weaponry of legionary from that period. Primarily, the stabbing sword was a fearsome weapon when fighting against someone who used a long slashing sword. A long slashing sword has to be raised and brought down, exposing the torso, and that short brief time of very fast movement from a short stabbing sword will do the job.
And from behind the shield.
The shield itself
is like a little fence. I mean, that's a big
perfect
shield.
Cover. Perfect cover.
So this is one of the spears that was designed to break on impact with the shield, right? So it would stick in and then break off so that like you couldn't reuse it, but at the same time you have the front part stuck in there, kind of like a fish hook or arrow, where like it's difficult to pull out.
The shield.
The shield itself
is like a little fence. I mean, that's a big
perfect
shield.
cover.
And so they'd have to
Perfect
ditch.
cover, and the sword simply licks out from behind the shield and does all the damage. The Romans were taught to go for face, body, and in doing that, in twist pull.
Wow. I mean, actually looking at you when you raise that shield, it's a pretty formidable barrier. I mean, that's a physical barrier.
It is.
And if they're coming forwards with that, you know, it's like a moving wall, isn't it?
It is, and trying to get past those shields, some Iron Age warriors with enormous bravery would throw themselves on the shields to try and pull them down. We have accounts of that, throwing away their lives just to get past those shields, which they found virtually an impenetrable wall. Yeah. But before he ever got to that stage, the pilum, the javelin, did a lot of damage. It doesn't matter how much armour you've got on. If you're stood in a line and you've literally got hundreds, thousands of people running towards you, screaming their heads off, waving their...
Question, guys. I know sort of the answer to my own question, but I still don't know if it's a good answer. So, you know, the concave, the curved shield to kind of protect you sort of at your sides. I mean, if you're in a legion, your sides are already kind of protected, no? And so would maybe... There must be an answer to my question, because these guys, warfare, and they must have found out this was the best shape. But why not just like a flat square that would provide slightly more surface area in front of you to block stuff? Does that make sense?
swords and shields. If they run into you, they're going to literally knock people off their feet. They're in amongst them. To stop that charge, to slow it down, the javelin, the pilum, was thrown in volleys simply to stop that huge rush, bring the front ranks, the second ranks down, and those behind would be tripping, falling, and everything starts to slow down. And the Romans didn't just wait, they just didn't stand there. During a battle, they actually moved forward and they closed very quickly on the last few yards in a rush.
So that reduces their opponent's thinking time.
Yes.
But you've got the front man with a pilum, man behind him with one?
Yes.
Did he hand it forward to the front man to throw
You can go 3 rows back, you can get 3 out properly.
So 3 men can throw?
Three men can throw.
Were there men
easily.
behind that?
Yes, there were.
So they could hand their pilums forward. So you've
If
got
necessary.
this potentially, you know, multiple volleys.
Yes, yes, and as I say, even if you didn't hit anybody, if they're stuck in the ground, you're going to fall over them. It's going to cause chaos. Everybody's falling over, trampling people, and that's what the idea of it was.
And then that shield is worthless.
Well, that's gone through, right? Let's see. I mean, if you were trying to hold that shield, I get your point.
It's sticking in, it's falling.
And it doesn't want to come out. You're
Doesn't,
quite,
does it?
really, it's harder to get out than I thought it would be. Too late, you're dead.
Yes.
Exactly.
Because that advancing
worked.
shield wall is coming towards you. That's really interesting.
I thought they would break on impact, but maybe this one's specially made because it's kind of a replica and they don't want it to break.
Yes, please do.
Oh, I would love to do that.
Wow.
You wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that.
Not a volley.
And that one's going to be even more difficult to take out, I'd imagine. Let's see how he does, because it's kind of wedged in with the steel. What is that called? I know, buckle or something?
Certainly not. That was well done.
But an army marches on its stomach.
Yes.
And these soldiers, we can already get the impression they're doing a lot of physical labor. They're walking everywhere, carrying a lot of their equipment, most of their weaponry. They are digging ditches at the end of every day's march, digging latrines, doing sentry duty. They are pitching heavy tents. You know, an army marches on its stomach and they've burned a lot of calories.
Yes.
What did they eat?
Right. The myth that Roman soldiers didn't eat meat, you'll read that many times over. From the finds that on their permanent bases, we find pork, mutton, we find beef, and so they were eating meat. They were eating just about everything that flew and everything that swam. Now, if you dry meat out, you can take it in the form of a dried meal. We know they had pulses. They were carrying this quern, so they were given enough to make their own flour. We know they were making unleavened bread. We have evidence for a sort of porridge that they ate first thing in the mornings on a march. But the truth is, we don't know for certain. There hasn't been an enormous amount of research into...
Sorry guys, I just wanted to raise the volume a bit.
...mornings on a march. But the truth is, we don't know for certain. There hasn't been an enormous amount of research into literally what did soldiers eat on the march.
Was it one cooking fire per conturbonium?
It would appear that way. So one of those 8 may have been a cook.
Doing or taking the cookery duties at that day.
Yes.
So they had some sort of, maybe some porridge for their...
Yes, it's a type of...
For breakfast. I don't know about a lunch break. I can't, but they could obviously take a hardtack biscuit. They had the capability of making that.
Yes, bucellum. There was a known oat cake style of biscuit that was very dry and had to be dipped in to soften it up.
And then in the evening they could eat meat cooked directly over the fire with bread, or they could even make a soup, I guess.
Unleavened bread we know of, because of the lack of yeast on the march. They can, heavily into vegetables. We do know they did like their vegetables and pulses. And rather than drinking all this water from the rivers, etc., etc., they did drink as far as we know, a drink called puska, which was more vinegar than wine.
This is sour wine.
It's a very sour wine.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have, they knew that there were bad humours in some of the things. They had no concept of germs, as it were. And not all rivers are good to drink from.
Well, I feel like even if you don't have a concept of germs, you could see patterns. If you see, oh, he drank out of the river, he's getting sick.
So it was a pretty staple diet of this soured wine.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because within the camp, I understand there were lots of specialist duties, one of which was bringing in firewood.
Yes.
And another was fetching water.
Now, do you trust the local water? I don't know.
Boil it?
We don't know. Was the water that was brought in for the animals rather than the legionaries?
It's very interesting questions. I guess they had, you got bones there.
I know what I'm saying, just boil it. From my point of view, obviously, like you said, they didn't know about germs, and I don't know if they would find out that boiling water from a less sanitary source would make it more sanitary.
There were colours on them. Are these like dice or?
Yes, these are knuckle bones. Again, great gamblers. Though, in theory, gambling was illegal in the Roman Empire. You weren't allowed to gamble, though everybody did. And knuckle bones, either...
Guys, sorry, I don't see why is gambling so controversial everywhere and in all time? It seems like something that, especially in ancient society, wouldn't really care about that much.
From a sheep or a goat, just a blob of colour on some of them. They have 4 different sides. And when you can gamble with them, you can even fortune tell with them.
The problem with that is that they do, sure, they have 4 different sides, but I'm sure because of the shape and the different bones you collect, some sides are more likely to land than on others. And
there we have 2 blues, 2 greens, so you have 2 pairs and nothing much. And you'd probably gamble away your pay.
Fascinating.
Roman engineering was a key part of their military success, as I found out when Dave Richardson gave me a demo of Roman artillery.
This is a ballista, and it's a stone. This is...
Dave Richardson gave me a demo of Roman artillery.
This is
so you can see it's not exactly this part where, so you have the rope stretching across, and you have the middle of the rope attached to this metal thing you can pull back, winch back or whatever, and then you can see these pieces of wood with the hooks that the string is connected to on both sides is kind of wedged in between this rope, and so it's not really on a joint that can flap back and forth, but it's like in between these flexible ropes. I'm sure it's very, very much held in there, because I'm sure if you pulled back this thing full strength and then that slipped out, I'm sure that could kill someone or something.
a ballista, and
I'm
it's
so
a
happy.
stone thrower. Here we have a typical ball, and that's quite a genuine one.
This is a
That's
real
a real
stone.
one.
So this might have actually killed somebody.
Yes, could well have done.
Wow.
I'm sure.
It's quite something, isn't it?
Please
Well,
fire
this is
it.
quite an impressive thing to look at, but I guess this was the artillery of its day.
Well,
You can see the little notches. I'm spitting everywhere. The little notches to kind of crank back, either so that you could keep cranking and then reset and have it hook and crank back, or just depending on the distance you want it to travel. I'm not sure if this can kind of swivel up or down.
oh yes, 60 pieces of these per Roman legion. They could also be mounted on ships and used at sea or landing on a beach. And they had an artillery crew. The power for these, though, came from not the bow arms or the bowstring, came from the bundles of rope that are twisted in opposite directions that hold the bow arm. Now, the Romans used sinew and horsehair to make the ropes, and as a second best, we're told they sometimes used hemp, which is what this machine has. But so many of these machines are still experimental as to how they really did work, how powerful they were.
But 60 of these per legion.
60 per legion.
They don't fire this.
Wow, that's quite something. And did they just shoot the balls?
No, you also had the catapulta, which fired a 1 meter length bolt.
Bolt?
Well, I'd like to see it used.
Right, it's a case of winding it up.
Shall I take this out?
Yes, we better remove that one. For safety, we'll use onions.
Aw, come on.
Right, if you'd like to take
I
one
can't
of these.
complain. Beggars can't be choosers. I'm choosers. I'm begging to see this.
Yep.
Yep. Now, the slider has gone forward, and the trigger mechanism
Levers
has
are
captured
fascinating.
the cup that the onion will go in. So, if we start, you'll hear.
Oh yes.
Who are you gonna hit? Why can't you use a rock? The onion won't go as far. Yeah, so you can see it's not just this string, like he said, that's going to propel it forward, but you can see these arms being pulled back. They're going to whip forward because of the rope.
That would have been an ominous sound.
Yes. One more.
You could feel the tension in there.
Let's get some
bet.
ropes on it. Ready?
It just will not travel.
Fire!
Yeah. Use a rock, please.
That's took some legs out. Yeah, just let it go down.
You really wouldn't want to receive one of those in the face, would you?
No. And remember, you're firing into the massed ranks of an enemy. So you're going to hit something.
It's truly
Guys, the
terrifying.
rock would have flown so much farther.
They were really quite something, weren't they?
Yes.
Wow, I've got a much better appreciation of the Roman army that came here.
God, I love it. Love this channel. Like, for sure. All right, guys. I think I'll do one more video. I'll upload these tomorrow. I did 4 or 5 videos today already. See you next time.